I call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. I have been made aware that this is going to be recorded recorded and/or streamed by ActonTV. Anyone else wishing to make a recording must be themselves known at the chair now. Okay. With that, we will go on to the first item, which is public participation. I see Tara Frederick standing at the podium. Tara, you may speak.
Thank you very much, Jason. I actually have to be across town giving a presentation to Green Acton on Kelly's Corner and the concerns that we have about the project. In anticipation that you may or may not get to the citizens' petitions tonight, I would like very much to give you my input before I run. First of all, I hope you take no position on the Kelly's Corner Supplemental Engineering and Appraisal Services. I also hope you take no position on the land acquisition, the 257 Central Street Pocket Park. We're waiting for P&S to get worked out or figure out what the costs would be to get out of that, and the petitioners can't be here tonight. I also hope you take no position or vote against the sewer enterprise budget request for the West Acton sewer study. Based on the surveys I've been doing, the West Acton businesses do not want it. The residents, very few want it. It seems like a big waste of money, and it would be paid for by the South Acton sewer users now out of their capital fund, so they'd have to pay that back. And then I personally have a couple of petitions up on the town meeting warrant. I've given you two pieces of paper. Try to visualize. When I was talking to Jason about these, I started drawing pictures, and I thought, gosh, I should do that for everybody. And if you look at the one that's sideways that has a Venn diagram on it, this shows a scenario one where currently we do a lot of talk about taxes and not a lot of talk about appreciation, and yet the appreciation is, or lack of appreciation, is the largest part of the quote-unquote value that we could be talking about. So I proposed two options: a building moratorium and or a limit on the number of permits per year. Actually, it would be one or the other, but the point is to give our planning staff some time to do some planning. So this is a referendum on whether or not we think we've been doing a lot of good planning and enough planning, and whether or not we want to take a break from building. It's legal. Other towns are doing it to give us a time to do a master plan to include water capacity and quantity planning, school capacity, road capacity, et cetera. And to show you in scenario 2, where you constrain the supply in a tight market, the appreciation increases. And so I was just giving you my view of that if we spend a little bit of money and time doing more land purchase and or just using more land tools to constrain the supply in the building, how does that work out? And I believe that it will increase my appreciation considerably, which would more, pay for whatever raise in taxes it would be by perhaps 10 times. And I think we should start considering things and looking at the externalities of building. So that's the first one, and that's actually two of my petitions.
Tara?
Yes, almost done. Oh, I don't know if you're allowed to ask questions on stuff that isn't specifically on the agenda, but I certainly can come back another time or talk to you. Is that allowed under open meeting law? I know that there's some watchdogs.
We have a budget hearing in a couple of minutes, so go ahead and finish up your remarks.
And then the other one is and I'll contact you, Tom. I have your contact information. The other one is the one that sits up like this, and it's about the limiting the percentage of land clearing. And so I met with Jason. He gave me some very good feedback. And what this would do is it would say if you look at the gray box on the right side, it would say, and I didn't put a percentage, I just said go study the issue and bring us some proposals so we can discuss them. Currently, you can land like 20% land cleared, 80% land cleared. So we can decide, but the idea is to discuss the idea of limiting the percentage of land cleared. This would be a bylaw change, not a zoning bylaw. Zoning bylaw is 2/3 vote, and it's grandfatherable. So everybody rushes to put their thing in before you vote. This would be non-grandfatherable, and it would be a bylaw change. So I give you some numbers about the number of acres that are vulnerable still, and as Jason had suggested, he suggested that if I wanted to explain the impact of this, that I would look at the value of the actual parcels being reduced, and then how would that increase the value of the neighboring parcels. And I've got some numbers here for you all to look at, and please call me if you'd like me to go through them in detail. But I actually got a call walking in here from a developer who said that he thinks that limiting the amount of clearing on a parcel would actually increase the value of all the other empty parcels that he's dealing with, and he considers himself a good builder, that he doesn't do clear cutting, and that this would help him. So I hope that you consider these things. Please contact me. My contact information should be at the bottom of these two things, and I'll let you guys go on and not talk forever. Thank you so much. And I'll be back after the Green Acton meeting, so thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, we actually are a couple minutes behind for the public hearing, which was set for 7:35. It being 7:38, it's met the time for the public hearing on the FY20 budget. I open the public hearing now. I do have a quick summation to read to the committee. FY20 budget hearing. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2020 is $98,554,827, which is an increase of $2,704,032, or 2.8% over the FY 2019 budget. The breakdown is the town has a budget of $35,861,539, which is a difference of basically $1.3 million, or 3.8% difference. The school district assessment for fiscal year 20 is $61,237,606, which is a difference of $1,255,647, a difference of 2.1%. Minuteman for fiscal year 20 is budgeted for $1,455,682, which represents a difference of $151,868, or 11.6% difference. The total for next year budget is $98,554,827. I already read that, 2.8%. The town operating budget is up by $909,174, or 2.7%. Subsidies decreased by $38,654, or 8%, and capital increased $425,997, or 171%, bringing the total increase to the town budget to the aforementioned $1,296,517, or 3.8%. The total operating budget for the Acton-Boxborough School District increased by $2,260,619, or 2.6%. After accounting for the school district's revenue, reserve use, and cost shifts per the regional agreement, Acton's assessment increased by $1,255,647, or 2.1%. The Minuteman assessment increase was due to the inclusion of $102,156 for the debt service for the new building. The increase in budgets will be met by the revenue changes here. Prop 2.5 represents $2,108,000. Untaxed levy capacity, as agreed upon by this committee, is $454,000. New growth is budgeted at $750,000. Increase in local receipts is $52,000. Increase in state aid is $13,000. Other is $6,244, and a decrease in residential use? Reserve use. Decrease in reserve use is $679,212. Just by way of reminder, Prop 2.5 allows for the increase in the tax levy at 2.5% per year. In some past years, Acton has increased property taxes less than the allowed 2.5%. In total, taxes could have been raised by more than they were in prior years. That amount is available to use to add to the 2.5% increase in property tax bills. The fiscal year 19 budget was $303,000. We had planned on doing a third, and a third. That didn't happen. So this year, the FY20 budget uses $454,000. As you all know, new growth is the value of new building, not previously included on the tax rolls, and local receipts include excise taxes, permits, and other fees. As a result, the average single-family tax bill will increase by 3.78%, from $11,318 in fiscal year 19 to $11,745 in fiscal year 20. Do I have any questions from the audience? Seeing none. Seeing none, I will close this public hearing on the fiscal year 20 budget. Excellent.
Will you send us copies of that?
I can.
Please.
Absolutely.
Just be good to have in addition, when we're going around for the point of view, just another cheat sheet to have in front of us.
I will be glad to forward this to the committee. I think Christie wants it for notes anyway. Okay. So that actually is something that we had to do before we are allowed to, or before we are supposed to deliberate on the warrant articles in front of us. Now that we have finally, as of I believe yesterday, received the draft warrant, we can go through and start our deliberations. In the spirit of trying to get as many of these done as possible, that's why we're going to have another meeting next Tuesday. Anything that we vote on tonight or next Tuesday, our positions will be posted in the town warrant. That said, if we do not feel we have enough information, or if we are not done deliberating it, we can absolutely move an article for the next meeting, or even the meeting after that if need be. But I'm going to try and go through these in as much order as I possibly can, with some notable exceptions. I have invited the superintendent and the director of finance for the schools to come and speak to their articles, and they are free to do so. They're able to do so next Tuesday night, so we're going to skip over those articles. And the articles that were assigned to Sahana, since she is absent tonight, we will also be skipping over those. Again, if something gets too contentious or too bogged down, or it gets to be too late, we can always push something for a later meeting. Yes, Mr. Burgart.
Point of information, the next meeting is supposed to be a week from today here at this time, and this room is already booked for another.
Our meeting next Tuesday is already booked for the EOC over at the public safety facility.
Thank you.
Yes. Same bat time, new bat channel. Okay. We can skip over to choose town officers and here accept reports. Budget transfer, I believe, is also a formality, and we do not have to take a position on. Okay, the town operating budget. This is one of mine. And this is the same number that this is indeed the same number that we just read as part of the budget hearing, and does correspond to the ALG agreement, the ALG spreadsheet that we all reached consensus on 2 meetings ago. So this is the $35,861,539 that was the summation of all the work that we got our first glimpse at during Budget Saturday, but all the other work that was done by the town leading up to this time. We have pleaded our case at ALG. We have come to consensus on it. I'd be willing to listen to anyone who wishes to speak on this, but I believe that but I will be entertaining a motion here momentarily for a recommend vote. Is there any discussion that people would like to have on this article, warrant article? Mr. Farley?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Finance Committee recommend this article.
Second.
Pick whichever one you want to call the seconded it. It's either Christine or Jeff. Okay. All those in favor of recommending this article, please say aye.
Mr. Chairman, can we, I think for form, you might want to say Article 4 Town Budget, just so that it's rather clear as to which article we are recommending, not this.
Fair enough.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to get the numbers straight. $35,861,539. I
Yes.
was previously under the impression that included the Kelly's Corner money, but then the next article has more money.
So that's, the Kelly's Corning money was supposed to be part of the overall budget.
Then why do we have another article following that authorizes another
It's a very
$525,000?
good question. Brian?
Mr. Chairman, if I may clarify that, so the 35,861,539 is total town spending. Article 4 should be 34,746,539.
That is not what the draft says.
That's why it's on draft form.
However, I would move that we approve the town operating budget of $34,746,539.
Do you withdraw your previous motion?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for catching that, Steve.
Yeah, 500,000 here, 500,000 there, pretty soon you're talking real money.
Don't get me started on $565,000. Okay. Do you have the motion as read, Christie? With the correct number? Steve, repeat the number.
$34,746,539. 746.
Who seconded it?
Jeff.
Jeff seconded it. Okay. All those in favor of recommending the amount of money in the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? It was a unanimous vote. Okay. That was Article 4, unless it gets renumbered later. Article 5, Town Capital, Kelly's Corner Supplemental Engineering and Appraisal Services. Who had this one? First question is, do you have anything that you need to present? And secondly, are you looking for a vote on this tonight, or are you looking just for this to be informational?
I don't have the exact numbers here. I haven't been able to get in touch with Kristen yet to find out what they are. The total number that she's asking for, I believe in, I just don't remember what the breakdown of how that is, the 525,000. Loosely, this supplemental engineering services is because they decided to add a light at Charter Road and one at the CVS 111 intersection, so it costs more to design that. And the appraisal is because if this project goes forward, we will need to appraise the property just along Route 27. Anything that is on 27 and 111 is dealt with by the state. So things that are solely on 27 inside of this project, including Community Lane, would need to be acquired by the town. This is appraisal services for that. That will not happen until much later in the process.
And this gets us to what level of design?
75% is my understanding. But I haven't looked at this language since this afternoon.
Yeah, 75% phase. Okay. We did have a presentation on this at a finance committee meeting, I believe, only 2 or 3 ago. Does the committee feel like it has had enough time to review this, or do the members wish to review this further, or seek out any other input before moving forward? Is everyone pretty much, yes?
The additional work that is done, that shows up in the supplemental engineering design, is still being covered by the TIP. So the money we will get from the state for this project has also increased. It's not just that we're having to pay more for the design also.
So because the scope of the project has increased, the return from the TIP is also going to increase commensurately?
Yes, it has. It should not cost us particularly much more, just the design services.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, so is the 525,000 the correct total? We just don't know the breakdown?
Yes.
I think I'd be willing to vote on that basis.
Okay. Okay, so for this motion, since I suspect that the wording of the motion will have to change, at least on some level, namely there are no numbers in A and B, I believe that we should only move to approve the move to recommend only the $525,000 limit as called out in this article. Do I have a second? Just 2 seconds. Would any more discussion on this article? Everyone said their piece on it? Yes, Roland.
So what happens in the event that that number does change before it goes to town meeting? What goes to the,
We would have the ability to go back and revote.
that's what I thought.
That's why I get hung up on numbers as opposed to approving articles. We approve a number. If the number doesn't change, our recommendation stands. If the number changes, it's invalidated.
Having now broadly discussed this, I'm happy to come back, if possible, with more firm numbers for next time. And we can just do a quick up-down vote at that point.
We have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? All those in favor of recommending $525,000 for Kelly's Corner Supplemental Engineering and Appraisal Services, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Nay. Sorry, opposed say nay, and that's me saying nay. Any abstentions? So it is not quite unanimous. Okay. Moving on to the next. Sidewalks and traffic calming. Who had this one? Christine.
So I wish I could enlighten us, but I have not yet heard back from Corey York, who I reached out to. So I do not have the details for what this is. I'll have to do it next time.
Very well. Okay. Article 7 is the ABRSD assessment. I would like to postpone that one until after we have the superintendent and the director of finance and see if there's any last questions we have for them. I believe that is going to be the same thing with Article 9. 8 is the, so 7, 8, and 9 are all school-related. So we will postpone those until we've had a chance to speak with the superintendent. 10 is the Minuteman Regional School District Assessment. I believe that is yours, Mr. Majors.
Yeah, I think as you efficiently explained just a few minutes ago, I think that number is fairly straightforward. And I vote that we recommend it. I so move that we recommend Article 10, the Minuteman Regional School Assessment, in the amount of, I don't have it here,
$1,455,682.
yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Christie, let me know if you need me to. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That is unanimous. Just for whoever is the future chair's edification, please know that there will be a request coming from the town, as you fully know, to put a debt exclusion for the building, the Minuteman building, starting next year. You can fight that then if you wish to, but be aware that that has been discussed multiple times. Okay. Article 11 is the CPC, and there are absolutely no numbers on this at all. So,
CPC is still in deliberation of what they want to do and how much they're going to fund, because some people were out last week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that is what's happening there. I told them that they have to come in and see us, as it's been his presence, as we've done in the past. So I'm still waiting to get, I will finalize them to see if they can come in next meeting, next week.
do you need me to officially invite anyone, or do they know
I
they're
already
invited?
invited them,
Okay.
and I was just riding with somebody in the elevator and said he feels that he's not on the CPC anymore, but they're dragging their feet this year, and they're really slow.
Okay.
I tend to agree with that statement.
Okay, so by our next meeting, they'll be 2 days away from the warrant having to go to print. So do you like the chances of them having their final numbers by next Tuesday?
If I was a betting man, 75%, yeah.
Okay.
Still kind of 25% of the fence that it
So we're
may
definitely going to
not come to consensus.
pass over Article 11 until there's anything approaching.
I will see if they
Numbers?
can, I will see if they can make next meeting, because I feel that they should come in and justify one of them. I do have an update on some things when we come to the.
By that same token, if they don't have final numbers, if they're not going to be in time for the printing of the article, then don't bother, have them come on our meeting on the 12th.
Yep, we'll do. The 12th or the 5th?
The next one is the 5th, which is next Tuesday.
And we have one on the 12th?
So I'm leaving it, we have the room reserved for the 12th, and it's been kind of on the schedule, and I'm not committing to make us have it unless we have a whole bunch of articles that we still haven't gotten to by
I will see
the end
if
of
they
the
can
5th.
make it to the 5th.
Okay, well, I would expect them to have their numbers in time to make it into the into the printed warrant.
I believe they will, and I believe they will
And if that's the case, then I would expect them to be able to
come in on the 5th.
come in on the 5th.
Fair enough.
Okay. Article 12, 348 to 364 Main Street is also completely blank in the draft. Does anyone have any more information about this? Do we want to discuss it now, or do we want to table this one until next week
Is
as
that
well?
one assigned to me?
Yeah, the Walker property.
Oh, it's okay. That's
Yeah, I think it has been, I don't have all the exact numbers, but the concept of what we're going to do with the property has been decided. They've had public meetings. It was presented to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen approved the plan for senior housing sponsored by the Acton Housing Authority. So it seems like it's pretty straightforward. That's the plan that was voted on. That's the plan that was approved. That's the plan I think we should go forward with. Even though we don't get our money back, but we're voting on this for the best interest of the town of Acton. There is obviously a severe need for senior housing. This addresses that criteria. We had some other criteria we were interested in, but after months of research from developers, from the state, from professional planners, some of those ideas that we would like implemented have proven to be not feasible for one reason or another, mainly the economics of the town, the base that these businesses would be drawing from, and so on. So I think in the best interest of the town, we should recommend that we recommend the plan as submitted by the Acton Housing Authority for what is called the Walker property, that we go forward. Just to put the issue to bed.
Tom?
Well, I agree with that sentiment based on the Board of Selectmen meeting a couple of weeks ago. This warrant doesn't have any numbers in it at all, so I'm not sure we're really in a position to recommend it. as I understand it, we will, quote, get our money back, but most of it comes from another pocket, right, the CPC funds. So I think it's prudent to wait until we see numbers here before we vote on it.
Roland?
I don't have any comment on it.
Oh, sorry, saw the mic on. Steve?
Yeah, I did read the summary that the Acton Housing Authority put together of their plan. And while I can't deny that there is a need for senior housing, this is a parcel of land we paid $1.8 million for a couple of years ago. The Acton Housing Authority proposal seems to say they will reimburse the town $1 million for the parcel we paid 1.8 for, but that million would, because it's coming from CPC, the Acton taxpayers will actually have contributed 75% of that million. So now we're kind of up to, the Acton taxpayers have invested $2.5 million into this piece of property that was probably never even worth the 1.8 we paid for it. And now by turning it over to Acton Housing Authority, we're foregoing all property taxes that we might ever have off that piece of property pretty much in perpetuity. If this goes through, I just want to say I don't ever want to hear from seniors that this town never does anything for them, because that is a gift of an extreme value. And I'm just irritated that it's come to this. I mean, our point of view for the past couple of years said we wanted to see that property monetized. This goes as far in the other direction as it possibly could. It takes any value the town might get out of it away forever.
Jeff?
Two related questions from that. And don't shoot me for brainstorming or thinking out of the box, but without thinking much about it, is the Acton Housing Authority is a nonprofit, but nonprofits get charged taxes for unrelated business income. So if a church was to run a housing project and make income on rents, I would have thought they have to pay income taxes or some other kinds of taxes. So I'm wondering if, just thinking out of the box, whether there's still a way of charging real estate taxes for that property. The other, again, way out of the box thinking is there any way that we can, put a note attached to that purchase and say, sure, you're going to get a bargain price, but you're going to pay us back over 5 or 10 years and allocate 5% of your rent each year, because that has to pay the town back for the value that we had in the property. So I'm just throwing out ideas that would be creative in ways of trying to get some of the money back into the taxpayers first.
Yeah, it should be noted that we didn't necessarily give up on this monetization of the Walker property. There was a proposal by Now Communities on the table that would have created 16 single-family units, smaller cottage-style homes, with 4 to 7 subsidized units. It would have given us a $1.8 million payment, with possibility of including a dog park and even possible community gardens. However, I don't know how to phrase this, but at the public hearing, when we voted on the two most viable plans, was one by the Housing Authority and one by Now Communities. The Housing Authority was $500,000 payment to the town plus $500,000 from CPC funds, so that's $1 million of our own money. The new Now Communities, the best case scenario was $1.8 million payment to the town, and it would also have generated at least $200,000 a year in ongoing in real estate taxes. However, at the public hearing, when the committee was voting on these two proposals, the room was overflowing with seniors. The final count was like 66 votes in favor of the housing plan from the Housing Authority, 3 votes for the Now Communities, mainly coming from members of the Finance Committee and Economic Development Committee members, and 4 votes to do nothing. So it's, the writing was on the wall. We would never get those Now Community type proposals passed at town meeting because, the deck is stacked against us. The seniors have spoken, and as Steve had said, I hope they appreciate this gift.
Roland?
So the $1 million, where does that end up going? Does that go back into the general fund of the town?
I'm not the town accountant, but yes, I would say it would.
But from a taxpayer's perspective, it's going from one pocket to the other.
Right, so you're taking money that was already taxed through the CPA surcharge.
Correct.
You're taking it out of there, and then you're giving it back to the town.
Correct.
It sounds good, but, the pants I'm wearing have 4 pockets. My wallet's in one of them, and I can
Mine is too,
distribute the
that's
cash
not good.
anywhere I want.
Yeah,
I would also remind everyone that at the time that we did the Walker Street purchase, it was because we didn't want something that was not in keeping with what we wanted for the gateway area of the town, being that this is right off of the exit ramp from Route 2. It's between the Kelly's Corner area and the town hall, and we didn't want a big, monstrous daycare center. And so my question is, are we getting what we wanted in terms of look and feel by turning this into senior housing versus some other option? Now, I know that the town did put out a request for quote or request for bid, whichever it is, for something along the lines of a small-scale hotel or a destination, boutique bed and breakfast, that type of thing, and that we couldn't get any takers. But hearing that there were 4 votes for doing nothing on the subcommittee, and seeing that I don't think anyone really likes this proposal here. First of all, I definitely echo what Mr. Farley said. Without numbers in this article, I'm prepared to push off vote until next week. But I'm glad that we're having the conversation tonight because it'll make the debate time that much quicker at the next meeting. I don't think we necessarily as a committee have to worry about the feasibility of other plans and whether or not they'd pass the political side. I think we are charged with just seeing if this is the right fiscal choice. And I see us as having wasted $1.8 million. Now pulling I won't say that because he's no longer with the Finance Committee. Speaking out of the other side of my mouth, now after having said that I don't like the idea of using CPC money to purchase something that we've already purchased. The other proposal of the Now Communities with 16 units, $200,000 in projected tax revenue on those units would get exhausted with the 14th school-age child that moves into that building at the current average cost of $15,198 per student. The 14th child makes those 16 units a loss. Now, that said, it is nowhere near the loss of completely wiping out the value that we've already put into it and never getting another tax dollar out of that parcel again. So I do not want anyone to make a motion on this tonight, but if anyone has any other concerns or if they're not sure of how they intend to vote on this, please know that we'll be bringing this up next week. Jeff, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, notwithstanding my pie-in-the-sky alternatives, I don't recall that there's some hard, fast magic formula that came up with what the housing authority would pay. So I wonder if we can ask them to pay more and come up with a plan that's more fiscally responsible relative to the taxpayers. I mean, it's whether you're buying a horse or selling a horse, and it just feels like, they're coming up with a very small number, and half of it's come from CPC. And when I read in the paper that the latest billable lot is $350,000, if they're going to get 16 units, now obviously it's not a buildable lot, but still it's $100,000 per unit would be $1.6 million. So where did they come up with only giving us $1 million and half this way and half that way? So I think personally I'm going to vote on this based on the fiscal soundness of it. That's our role. Our role is to be a creative tension between the people of the town that want everything for nothing and people in the town who can't afford anything and still need some services. And although I'm 100% in favor of senior housing and subsidized housing, I think we need to reach that tipping point where half the people, each party feels they got okay. Not super, I won and they lost, but something in between that seems more fair to the other citizens of the town.
Steve? So Mike, just a question. So procedurally, I know the committee didn't have 66 members. So the committee just threw it open to an open meeting and whoever came and got to vote on this? It's highly unusual. I've never seen one done quite like that.
Yeah, that's about what happened.
So you can have the same meeting another night with a different audience and a different decision to be made.
Mobilize the troops, and that's, I guess the same thing sort of goes on at town meeting when there are controversial issues. The town didn't get what they want, they got what they need, but our concern was that we could easily accommodate that housing authority plan at some other location. It didn't have to be our primo, town center location, but it was very frustrating because we did come up with a plan that was viable, would be a perfect fit for the for that parcel. The developer, Dan Gainsborough, was in the audience, but he was not invited to speak.
Really?
I don't know why he didn't just raise his hand. I didn't know he was even there until I saw the log of attendees the next day. But, I think if he had been allowed to present his case, it might have been a different outcome. But the only people that voted for the Now Communities plans were members of, from the Finance Committee, myself, the Economic Development Committee representatives, and some other members like that were in the audience. So the deck was clearly stacked against us, and that's, they mobilized the troops. They had the loudest voice. It could have been, if it got to town meeting, it could have been, just as bolsterous, and who knows, that it could have been a fiery or a very interesting evening.
Tom had his hand up first.
I just want to make sure we do understand the math on this correctly. I understand we're moving the monies from one pocket to another, but we've already paid for this, 1.8 million rather. We've already been taxed for that. The monies that are coming from CPC, we've also already submitted with tax. So I think I'm just not sure it's fuzzy math to keep adding this and that and get up to 3.5. I think 1.8 is the total. And I just want to make sure that we all understand what we're really talking about for total taxpayer dollars on this before we vote on it.
I hear what you're saying, Tom, but CBC could have other uses for
Yeah.
the money.
So it's the 1.8 million,
It's, you
it's
know,
the 1.8 million that we already spent, plus the opportunity cost of what that CPC money could have been used for instead.
Yeah.
So you can't, I agree with you, I would not add 1.8 and $500,000 and get to the 2.3. I agree with you. But there is the opportunity cost of what the CPC could have done with those monies instead. And what are we giving up by using these monies for this purchase? Al, you were next.
I'm not as well versed in this as everyone else here because of my lack of history, but I'm just curious to know, is there a pressing need for the sale? Is it right now, in such a short span of time after the purchase?
Okay, well, I'm gonna quibble with you on the short amount of time since the purchase. There was no movement on this for fully 2 years, and now there is what seems to be in my opinion, hasty decision to just build housing. So while nothing was done for quite some time, this is where we find ourselves now. Did I answer your question? What's the other part of your question? Okay. Roland.
Quick, Brian, what year did we purchase that property?
Oh, that was had to have been at the town meeting in 2017.
Was it 2017? I think it was later than that. I think it
I
was
think it
earlier
was
than that.
2014, 2015, maybe?
Yeah, because
I think it's-
River Street, the property was bought after that.
It was while I was on the committee, and this is only my 4th year, so it couldn't have been in 2014.
It's about 2.5 years our committee was working on this.
Could have been 2016. We'll find out in a second. In the meantime, did you have something else? Did you have a follow-up once we have the date?
Well, I mean, I just, I think
It's in our point of view.
if whatever decision we end up going with, it's going to set, I think, some sort of precedence for the River Street property too. And we've been after the town from this committee with River Street of getting it, to get CPC to get in there, and that's just kind of,
Let me
I don't know, but anyway.
let me jump the gun on this one, because I understood that they were tagging on a 53rd article, that Board of Selectmen just discussed this, a 53rd article for River Street to take housing off the table for River Street. Is that accurate from the Board of Selectmen meeting?
Yes.
What,
So while I agree with you that this is precedent setting, in the case of River Street in particular, I believe that they're asking to take a recharacterization of what the Board of Selectmen can do with that property.
so that mean that it could not be developed with housing?
No,
Thank
so last night at their meeting, the proposal was from the committee that the selectmen narrow the options for River Street to be historical, recreational, or nature. So
Open
all
space.
those purposes that CPC could, in fact, be used monies for that property. They had looked at all the others, and they asked the selectmen to give them permission to drop all of the uses other than the 3 that I mentioned that are candidates for CPC.
But your point about this being precedent-making is not lost on me.
Well, I think it's been batted around for several years, and that they're going to say, oh, well, you put housing on, if that article doesn't pass, that, oh, you put housing there, I want to put housing on that River Street property too, and maybe the citizens don't want that. So I just think if you might get a big group this way of that property too, and then that becomes developed as housing that we don't necessarily want, because we've also taken these 2 parcels out of tax revenue. So, I mean, I know how I'm leaning right now, but that's my point, that
Thank
people
you.
be aware of.
Jeff?
Just again, it's pardon my ignorance, but is it possible, I mean, we'd like to get some of that $1.8 million back and not by just shifting money around. I mean, could the Acton Housing Department, it's going to have to bond, pick a number, $5 million or whatever it is to build the building. Can they, in fact, raise money to also buy the land as part of building the building, and therefore they have to pay the town back real money for for those apartments and factor that in the rent or whatever, because it's still going to be a bargain, I think, in terms of what they do with the thing. Can we suggest to them that that would be a more viable process, because then we would get real money back from them? Can they do that?
To the Board of Selectmen to make their negotiations.
There's a fairly detailed write-up on it available in one of the selectmen's packets. It's a fairly highly leveraged thing where there's state money, there's federal money, there's, all sorts of money, and then they actually borrow very little of the total cost of building the thing.
But why couldn't land be included?
Not my area of expertise, Jeff. I have two problems with this. The first is the numbers make no sense to me. The second is the process makes no sense to me. If you commission a group of people to study an issue for 2+ years, and then you basically throw it open to whoever showed up that night, however informed or uninformed they might have been, you basically just discounted the effort of Mike and other people who served and studied that committee for 2 years. I would like to know what the committee actually might have recommended as opposed to whoever showed up that night.
So that was a good debate on this article, which we will table until next Tuesday night. Next week's meeting is going to be a doozy. Let's just put it that way. Moving on to land acquisition or lease of 19 and 21 Maple Street. Microphone.
Those two parcels are owned by Gordon Richards. He is right near the train station. You may have seen it in the news that he is leasing parking spaces, and the town tried to have a good relationship and ultimately either buy or the property from him and turn it into town-run, be part of, and would qualify for zoning. But I believe they're still negotiating as to whether that will be a lease or whether it'll be a purchase. And Matt Shelby is the person at the town who's working with the selectmen. I talked with him, and the selectmen are still negotiating. They have not come up with either a price. I told Matt that I'd want to know the P&L. If we do a lease, what is the cost of a lease versus how much we'd get, how many parking spaces, and the cost of maintaining it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I also asked the question whether the land needs to be improved to meet any kind of zoning requirements in terms of the parking spaces themselves, and would the owner or do we have to make those changes? So I have to ask that we just table this because we have no real solid information on whether it's a purchase or a lease. But they're on notice that I, at least as the liaison in the Finance Committee, that I would want to know the economic value of doing this as opposed to letting him do it on his own.
Okay.
Yeah, also that owner of that parcel has not been the most consistent person to deal with. Just leave it at that.
Okay, we will table that until next time as well. Do you anticipate, Jeff, that they're going to have final?
He thinks that, well, I'm not sure if they're going to go into executive session next week, the selectmen, to talk about how they finally got a deal or not. But I'm not optimistic that there'll be a conclusion.
Yeah, and the way this is written is we're just authorizing the Board of Selectmen to do what they see fit. It's the way this article is written.
Yeah, and I wouldn't support it until we have some real numbers and we can look at the economics. It's not it's not that I wouldn't vote for something that showed a small economic loss to the town if the better good was we got that many more people that were near the train station that could use it, and there were town people and all those kinds of things. So I'm not looking for a big profit, but on the other hand, if we have to lease it as 40 spaces and then somebody measures and says, oh, but we can only get 20, that ain't going to work very well.
Is it your expectation that the language in this article is going to change in the next week?
No.
Okay. We will keep that in mind when we take up this article next week as well. Any other conversation on this one at this time?
Just a couple of quick questions, if you've looked into it. Is there a current home on this lot at all?
Yeah, there is a home. I have the cards. There's the home.
This
And
is a single
the
building.
plot plan, oops,
And is he leasing spaces today on it? He is?
yeah.
And is
he
that
is.
permissible under the
No, it is
existing
not.
zoning?
And he was,
So he's in
over the
violation?
years, he's been asked to desist on the matter, but
And at
cease
this
and
point,
desist, cease and desist.
final question,
but
are we
then-
negotiating
but then
with him now? Is he
well,
willing
the
to sell
selectmen
it at
now-
some price, or?
The selectmen then backed off on rattling the swords and said, well, let's be friends. You can keep leasing it until we come to an agreement. So I don't know if they've,
Yeah, we offered to buy that parcel for exactly what he was getting for his leasing that spaces, so he would still make out, but first he said yes, then he said no, and I'll think about it, and now it just progresses on from there.
let's say. Article 14 is acquisition of 257 Central Street. And that's owned by James and Helen Watt. And you probably can't see it from here, but it's a large property with a house on to the right of center, and the homeowner is carving out a second lot in his backyard, which is 15,000 square feet and a third of an acre, and negotiating with a builder to put I think, a two-family townhouse. It wasn't clear whether it was going to be two townhouses with two families in each, but I think it's a two-family. And there's going to be a zoning board of appeals meeting March 4th at 7:30 downstairs to go over whether that's going to be allowed. The petition is a special citizens petition that the town instead should buy the land and stop the developer from developing the two townhouses. As you know, not in my backyard. They are fairly large homes in the area. I think the petitioner will probably argue that they could use part of it for the farmer's market and make it into a park and all those kinds of things.
So Article 14 is not a citizens petition article, correct?
Yeah, it is.
This is from the Board of Selectmen, isn't it?
No, it's a citizen's petition.
It is?
But it needs 2/3 vote.
Okay.
It's not a recommendation or a directional, it's that we should actually buy the property.
So the by right, is there any problem by right, Brian, of the townhouse being built on this subdivided property?
I'm not sure, Jason. I'm not sure if it's by right or if they're proposing a 40. It sounds like more like it's by right. I can't.
Jeff, do you know if this is a by right, or is this going to require a different?
I
Process.
do not, other than there's a ZBA meeting, so I don't know if you have to go from them for either way or not. I was planning on going to that meeting and seeing what was going to happen. I'm trying to understand how the citizens would slip the town in and buy the property out from under the owner.
Is there a number involved here?
No, there's no number, there's no, when I asked the question, I was told that it's not necessarily part of the permitting, that you have to tell what the number is, what the developer's paying. It doesn't say, it doesn't require eminent domain, so I'm guessing that it's a wide open thing, and if the developer's paying X, that, the town's going to be in a bidding war, I don't know.
I think it's left open, whether they can reach agreement or by eminent domain or any other means, and we'd need to know a number.
I actually spoke with Tara Friedrichs a little about this, and I can't remember her last name. Annette is also active in this. My understanding is, and this is probably third hand, that the owners would actually prefer to have the town buy this, that they didn't realize that that was an option, so there are more questions to this, but it might be a little more clear than it sounds like, that they're trying to get out of something else, and that they were not particularly interested in charging a lot for it. They mostly wanted to cover costs, but again, this is.
Until there's a number on paper, all
I'm
that.
I'm just trying to provide a little background. It sounds unlikely that we're going to get into a bidding war.
Well, Mr. Chairman, again, buying the horse or selling the horse, it should be part of our negotiation, because if the landowners would stay in their home, of course, their home property would be worth much more if the backyard was a park, as opposed to two townhouses. So maybe we could actually buy it for less money, but one never knows what the price is at this point. So I can't take a recommendation without any money. I'm not sure that for a meeting, let's see, our next meeting is the 5th. So I'll go to the ZBA, I'll find out what I can. We can bring it up at the 5th, but if we don't have any numbers, I would take no action. Or make no recommendation. Is that?
Or flat out recommend against, because otherwise you leave it wide open for the Board of Selectmen to do what they wish. But we will, okay.
If the board, if no numbers come on the thing at town meeting, we can then take a recommendation. Make a recommendation if we think it's too much or it's the wrong thing.
Yes, but if there are no numbers at all, and the article stays as it is written,
Right.
it is giving carte blanche to the Board of Selectmen, which I would recommend is, which I would prefer we not recommend than to not make a recommendation at all.
All right, well, let's defer it for a week anyway.
Yeah, we're going to defer for a week anyway. Did you want to say something else, Christie? Anybody else want to discuss this one anymore? I would ask Jeff if you would look into if that two-family townhouse is a by right or not, because that would have bearing on our negotiation position. Yes.
Just one more point for this. The new lot would require a curb cut on Pearl Street, where the farmer's market currently is. It would mean that the farmer's market could not be there anymore because it would become a used road. There are no other curb cuts on there. So it doesn't affect our financials, but it would cause extreme change required for the farmer's market. It might very well kill it if this happens.
If the townhouse happens, but not if it gets turned into a park.
There was some discussion at the Selectmen's meeting about that, and they have alternative ways to do the farmer's market, especially during construction. And then they were even having talks with the builder, the developer, to allow for a few weeks for the farmer's market to encroach, if you will, for some of the surrounding area during market times. So they were not, the discussion was not, don't let this pass because it will kill the farmer's market. They seemed to feel that they could work with it. So I know at this time.
Any other comments on 14? 15 is fund collective bargaining agreements. I believe that was yours, Steve.
Yes. These articles are taken up when we reach an agreement with a collective bargaining unit. It needs to be brought to the first available town meeting, annual or special or otherwise. The only one that they have reached agreement on is the dispatchers, which is the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Local 25, Public Safety Dispatchers. There are 12 employees affected. It's a 3-year contract. The increases are 2% in each of the 3 years. The cost impact the first year is $9,435. In effect, that's all town meeting has ever asked to approve. If you approve the funding in the first year of the contract, it is assumed that the second and third years will be funded. I'm not saying that they won't reach an agreement before town meeting with anybody else, because these things can happen fast, because on the other side, they know that there's a town meeting coming up, and they know it has to get approved at town meeting. Sometimes these things come up fairly late in the game, but at the moment, we only have one to deal with. So on that basis, I would recommend, I would move that we recommend Article 15.
In its entirety or just Section C?
We can move it in its entirety because the only thing that is applicable is Section C. If something comes up between now and town meeting when they have to add something, then we'll have to take another vote.
Then I would recommend that you make your motion to only fund the collective bargaining agreement with regards to the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 25.
All right, then I will move that we recommend Article 15, Section C, the agreement with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 25, Public Safety Dispatchers.
Second.
Anyone want to discuss it? Or for $9,000, are we good to go? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That is unanimous.
Um, 16 is also mine. The fees for late payments of property taxes, excise taxes, things like that have been $5. And this proposes that we increase it to $15. We could go higher. We could go up to 30. Brian doesn't want to get greedy. He doesn't want to start any fights.
How many years has it been since we last changed this? Ballpark.
Have we ever changed it, Brian?
Have we ever changed it? It's been at $5 forever.
For, at least the last 10, 15 years?
I've been here for 27, and I've only known it to be 5.
So why in hell are we only going to 15?
Well, we have a new deputy assistant treasurer collector in the office, and I think she's been looking at this compared to other communities, and I think it's, it's long overdue. I think it should have been done at least in steps through the years, and I think her review of it, she kind of suggested the 15 with Steve and I, and, we're going to go with her recommendation. She did a lot of research on this, and we think that the 15 would be appropriate. This is primarily going to impact motor vehicle excise tax bills. Those seem to be more problematic, obviously, than real estate tax bills.
I don't expect a solid number from you on this, but can you give us a ballpark of how many bills this pertains to in any given year?
Well, Brian estimated we get about $32,000 out of this.
More than before? At $10 a pop, okay. That's more
3,200
delinquent
bills.
bills than I thought.
It's not marijuana, but it's something.
Okay. So again, so 15, because 15 is the number that other towns are using?
I think that's kind of a common, I think it's kind of a common number that we're finding a lot of the surrounding communities using.
Okay. Chris, do you like to keep track of things that we should do in the future? 5 years from now, it should be 20. Of course.
Would it make more sense to have a percentage of the bill, say 1.5% or something like that? Is there a way to make those who have a larger bill due, pay more?
You can go ahead, but Mass General Law, whatever chapter specifies dollar amounts, they do not specify percentages.
Understood.
Okay.
Anyway, so I will move that we recommend Article 16.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of recommending changing the demand fee for late payments to $15, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. Commuter lot and station maintenance. That is Dave's, right? So Dave not being here, we will pass that one over. 18 is Dave as well? Okay. 19.
19 is mine.
yours.
I'm up. This is the transfer station and recycling enterprise budget. The expenses of this are funded entirely, 100%, by the user fees, people who dispose of trash at the facility. You can see that the revenue budget is exactly equal to the expense budget, $618,800. And year over year, it's the 2020 request is essentially even with the 2019 budget. The four items of any significance that are different, salaries are up about $5,000 or less than 2%. Recycling is up $10,000 because more people are recycling, but trash removal is actually down $20,000 because fewer people are disposing of trash. They're recycling. And then finally, the capital outlay is up $5,000 from $30,000 to $35,000. I honestly don't know what that is, but the net result of all of this is a flat budget from $619,000 in 19 to $618.8 in 20. And based on that, I would move that we recommend this budget.
I have a question first. Discussion. So I'm looking at this, it says fund balance as of 6/30/18. Budget revenue, $519,387. Budget expenses, $619,387. I don't know if that's a typo or if they're spending $100,000 more than what they took in the year before.
Well, that was last year. So this year, they're
Yeah,
flat.
I'm just wondering if those figures are not correct though.
So the budget revenue and the budgeted expense are off by $100,000.
Right.
Last year,
Yep.
correct.
So did that,
And the fund balance went down by 100,000,
so
so I
that's how they
suspect
funded
it's
it
right.
that year?
Yeah.
So that's how they funded it last year. They used 100,000 of the fund balance to minimize, to draw down their fund balance. And this year, they're not proposing to draw down their fund balance at all.
I'm good with it.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Sewer enterprise budget, I believe, is Dave. I'm going to need to make sure that Dave comes to the next meeting. 21 is ambulance enterprise budget. Who's got that one?
I apologize, I'm not prepared to talk about this one, but I bet Brian could enlighten me real quick on the ambulance enterprise budget.
No, I can make it really easy on you.
Make
There
it
are no
easy?
numbers, there are no numbers in this draft. If you'd like to wait until there are firm numbers next week, we can do that.
So we got numbers from Brian last minute, but I'm perfectly happy to talk about this next week. You sent that spreadsheet, and are those the final
No.
numbers? Okay. So we'll review them and discuss them next week then.
Okay. Thank you. So we will table 21. 22, transportation enterprise budget.
I'm waiting for numbers.
Do you believe they'll have them by the 5th, or do you think they're going to go to print without numbers? You like the
I've
odds?
had numbers every other time I've read the warrant. I think we'll have them by then. I'm hoping for the 5th.
Very good. Revolving fund budgets.
That is mine also, and as you can see, The estimated revenue for fiscal year 20 of $745,222 exactly matches the requested expense. These revolving fund budgets are 100% self-financed, and based on that, I would move that we recommend this article.
Any discussion, or is this cut and dried? It's pretty cut and dried. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Article 24 is the Agricultural Commission. That is Sahana's. She's not here tonight, so we will look at it next time. Same with 25, Right to Farm. So that's also Sahana's. 26 is amend general bylaws, demolition delay. Whose is this? I don't remember this one. Oh,
I did some preliminary survey on it, but I want the opportunity to talk to some more people in town about this, more people like from the planning board. So I'd like to defer this to next week. This and the other, many of the other citizen petitions.
well, so 26 we can table if you need more time on it. 27 is the public way permits. Whose is that?
No.
27 is the chapter.
26, in the most recent draft article, 26
I was
is
looking at our spreadsheet.
the amend general bylaws, chapter N, demolition delays, 26.
The confusion is that the spreadsheet that we got has different numbers than the most recent warrant.
That's why I'm reading it through the warrant. Okay, so you'd like to delay on,
Yeah, this and the other petitions. We
Well,
have, I
not
have
all of
some
them.
comments, but I'd like to,
not all of them, right? Because some of them are mine to chase down. So 28 is planning board membership.
What happened to public ways? 27. Is that 27?
Everything's been renumbered. So I'm flipping through the draft warrant that was sent by Mark Hall yesterday. 26 is chapter N, demolition delay. 27 is.
Is mine, I have discussion
we're
on that.
using the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I have 27.
Amend general bylaws, public way permits. Let's go by names here.
So what happened last town meeting, that was in the consent agenda, and it got held, and everybody made a big deal out of not wanting to delegate permitting from the selectmen. They all wanted their day in front of the selectmen. So that's why this is not in the consent. It's coming up again, but the need is the selectmen meet only twice a month. In 1 month, they meet only once, or they don't even meet 1 month. And we need a way to issue permits, like when the National Grid has to fix a leak. They have to go in there and fix the leak, and they need a permit, and they need it right away. The risk is they just do it and hope that they'll get the permit after the fact. So the selectmen are in favor of this, allowing the engineering department to issue these specific critical permits. And we're hoping that the citizens of the town will say, well, if for some reason the engineering department doesn't issue it to them, they can always appeal to the selectmen and somehow get in front of them. And the issue that happened last year will not be an issue. So I recommend that we have to be able to delegate responsibility in times of time-sensitive things to people like the engineering department. I move that we recommend Article 27.
Do I hear a second? Any further discussion on this? Sounds to me like this is a case of just moving the responsibility from the Board of Selectmen to the paid professionals in the town. Very briefly, since we're coming up on some of the other articles.
Yes, just that I'm sympathetic with people that want to have their say in front of the selectmen, and that they already do emergency repairs without a permit, and I think they should. But I also think that people should have a chance to speak. In fact, that's how the whole gas leak bylaw thing has progressed through every other week we have the list of permits requested. So I think that was an important place for people to.
Mr. Burkhardt, is it your understanding that if somebody was turned down by the designee, that they would still be able to get in front of the Board of Selectmen?
I believe any citizen has the right to appeal to the Board of Selectmen, because they are the granting authority. Ultimately, they're delegating what they are, the granting authority. The irony is 99% of all of these permits are on the Selectmen's consent decree, and there's never any discussion or any issues with it. So the Selectmen felt, and the engineering felt that, well, why do this after the fact kind of cleanup when, it's really important that they be able to address emergencies. And I don't
So
see
to
that-
put another way, this streamlines things that should happen, and if something is held up, it does not change the right of the people to go and appeal it.
my understanding.
But we don't get to see, by putting it on the agenda, we get it in the agenda packet, and then we can appeal to the selectmen right then, as opposed to finding out when the bulldozer shows up. Anyway, thank you.
I will point out that when my only experience is that anything that is schedulable and plannable has to be, I had like 30 different abutters, people I never even knew who abutted me, 100 miles away, had to be notified when I wanted to do a 20-foot cut in the road to get gas in front of my house. So if it were the bulldozer showing up, people would be notified. It's different. This is cutting into the sidewalk and tie-ins to people's houses. It's not.
This isn't my main issue. I don't really care that much about it. I was just telling you how I interpreted the people that were speaking against it.
Okay. So it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of recommending the public way permits amend general bylaws, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Article 28, Planning Board membership, amend the town charter. Whose is this? Very good.
So what this would do is this would change the membership of the planning board from 7 members to 5 members. This would be the first step in the process. The change requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting, followed by a vote at the next annual election. So basically, this is the first step. If town agrees, then it goes to the ballot and goes from there. I think why the impetus on this is that, from what I've understood when I was on the committees, we're having a hard time getting membership for the planning board. That might make it a little bit easier.
Okay. Is it our expectation, well, first of all, is there an immediate financial concern on this?
No financial concern whatsoever.
Is it the expectation that a committee of 5 would be able to be more nimble than a committee of 7?
I really don't see what the difference is myself, but
Okay.
yeah, I think a committee of 5 would be just fine with that.
Anybody see any risks to doing this? Tara, I'm not going to be able to let you speak to every single article.
Just a drawback that it helps, if we were doing actual planning, I would say, yes, we need to be nimble, but right now, the planning board meeting really is only processing applications for developers, so I would rather have them not meet. Thank you.
Do you have anything to add? You got the microphone on.
Just that I think the whole purpose is quite often they're not able to get a quorum, so they're looking for a smaller membership so they can legally meet with a quorum.
Again, any risk to doing this that anyone sees?
Do we have a reason to take a position on this? Does it have a financial impact on the town? So I move that we make no recommendation.
there a second? Okay, there has been a motion to make no recommendation on planning board membership. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. It's one. Any abstentions? And just for the record, I'm abstaining because I think we should make a recommendation on everything. So that's just my saying no. 28. 29, detached accessory apartments. This is, I want to make sure that I get this right. 29 is the one that's being brought by the Board of Selectmen. 30 is the one being brought by citizen petition. They deal with largely the same topic. Who had these? Dave. Of course Dave has these. Okay, passing over 29 and 30 until we have Dave. Yes. Yes, Kristen.
I suspect Terry is here to speak to some of these that Dave is not here for. Do we know whether he will be at the next meeting?
We
Or
do not know if he
do
will
we
be.
have a way that we will discuss
them.
these if he is unavailable?
If he is not available next week, we'll be taking them up anyway,
Okay.
because it is my intention to go through as many of these and make a recommendation, no recommendation, in time for the printing of the town warrant. So if Dave is not there next week, we will most certainly be taking these up.
Can we do it now?
No, we're going to take them up next
Oh,
week.
okay. All right, because the people that won't be there, the petitioners won't be here again. Because the Casey.
So one is the Board of Selectmen and one is you.
Oh, okay, so the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Department refused to bring these forward this year, and the Commission on Disabilities members wanted to bring this forward. So I suggested do a petition, and I'll bet you the Planning Department will put their form forward, and so that happened. The issue is that the citizens petition came in with a special permit process required, and the one from staff, not surprisingly, came in with no special permit process required. So I personally like the idea of a special permit process because it protects the neighbors with an abutter notice and a comment period, and the staff prefer it because it's more efficient to just rubber stamp or do it during the day without everybody noticing. So I'm in favor of the petition, but not the staff one. That said, the petition one, when it was typed up, put 2,000 square feet accessory apartments, which is really big. It's the size of a house. So I'm against that part of it, but the petitioners are going to move from the floor to change that to the 500, so it will match the one brought forward to staff, except that it'll have special permit required.
This was brought up in 2017 and was voted down at
Correct.
that time.
And that's why the staff one is exactly the same thing that was voted down, and I'm saying if you put special permit required, I think it'll pass.
Okay. So we will let Dave weigh in at the next meeting. We do have your comments on the record here. Moving on to 31, plastic bag ban. You want the clicker?
Sure. Oh, yay.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. This is the bylaw. It's, if you've read it, they're attempting to regulate the retail use of single-use plastic checkout bags and promote the use of reusable bags in the town of Acton, and everything below that is green initiatives. California did a plastic bag ban alone and found that it had no effect on total bag usage. Everybody switched to paper, but used the same amount of bags. Banning plastic bags increases use of paper bags, but if you add a surcharge of 10 cents on paper bags, then bag use was reduced significantly. Why this is important is that paper bags consume more non-renewable energy in almost every category than plastic bags. So if we only, this bylaw only bans plastic bags, does not add the fee, and so we can look at an increased use in paper bag consumption. If the goal is environmental, this does not achieve that goal. This is the amount of times you would have to reuse a paper bag. The HDPE refers to a single-use handled plastic bag. So you'd have to use your paper bag 3 times. The thicker, heavier reusable plastic bags that they sell at some of the grocery stores, you'd have to reuse 4 times. And the typical reusable store bag, which is that kind of woven fiber plastic mix, 11 times, and a cotton bag 131 times. Cotton has an extreme environmental impact. Once it's in a landfill, paper and plastic break down at the same rate, because as much as paper is compostable and recyclable, landfills do not do that. And so paper bags are bigger, so they fill, even though they are recycled at a higher rate, one paper bag takes up a lot more space than a lot of plastic bags. And it takes 91% more energy to recycle a paper bag than a plastic one. As far as Acton's businesses, I reached out to many, large and small. Paper grocery bags are bulky, they take up more space. This was a problem for Stop and Shop. They have small storage areas, and they're going to have pallets of paper bags as opposed to the smaller boxes of plastic bags. The purchase price per Donnellan's and Roach Brothers for a paper bag is about 8 to 10 cents each, and a fraction of a cent for plastic grocery bags. And while so they are seeing in their stores in towns that already have bans that prices have to increase either as a paper bag or overall in the cost of what we buy at the grocery store. So I don't think this bylaw, as written, achieves the goals of the bylaw. Higher cost to retailers, higher cost to consumers, higher environmental cost. Those are just my references. I'm just going to go back to the top real quick. So I did speak to a member of the people who wrote this bylaw, and ultimately their goal is to get everybody using reusable bags and to take plastic out of the environmental stream. The only thing that seems effective at that is a fee, which we are not considering at this time. As far as a financial point of view, this is going to cost the businesses in town, and thus the consumers. So I guess we have to look at it holistically and look at it from the financial point of view and from the environmental point of view and decide if we have feelings about that. If you have any questions, I probably have answers.
Is it safe to say that if a fee were imposed, just a blanket fee, if people don't bring in their pre-existing reusable bags, if any fee were imposed, that the overall bag usage we would expect from what you just described would go down?
That's correct.
So would it be more likely to change behavior to just leave people to have the option of paper, plastic, or for 5 cents, 7 cents, whatever cents less, be able to use their longer-term reusable bags?
I could not find an instance where a fee was imposed without the removal of the plastic bag, but I would presume once you add any kind of fee, you're going to have people start bringing their bags or not taking a bag if it's 1 item or 2 items.
Mm-hmm. Mike?
Yeah, paper bags cost 10 times as much as plastic bags, as was just indicated, and that's, you got to look at the business person too, as well as the consumer. By eliminating plastic bags, switching to paper, their expense and their micro-thin profit margins are put under pressure because they're paying now 10 times as much. And a lot of people are just thinking of grocery stores. What about if you go to CVS or the paper store or places like that with small purchases, they're going to give you a big paper bag? I think it's a burden and an expense for the businessmen who are already beat up any number of ways, and I just think it doesn't make sense at this time, especially since it doesn't meet the environmental goals, which is, a good thing. I mean, it's good to meet these goals, but this this warrant doesn't meet that criteria.
Mr. Burgart?
A couple things come to mind. First is, we don't have at the dump any place where you can recycle these paper bags, or these plastic bags. In fact, there are signs saying you cannot put plastic bags in. So that seems that if there were, like we have paper, at least that would be something that we could benefit from. The other thing is, I don't think, maybe I missed it, but paper is a renewable resource, where petrocarbons are not. So if we're not recycling the plastic bags, then we're just drawing out of the ground, and eventually we won't have anything to make plastic bags out of. So that's a little myopic, but when you talk about billions of bags, it's lots of gallons of oil. So I wonder about that. The other thing is, I thought, and maybe it hasn't happened lately, but at one point I thought I went to one supermarket and they would give you a nickel for every bag you used of your own. And so I said, wow, 3 bags, 15 cents, I'm helping everything, and it was actually an incentive. And I started thinking about having bags in my car and making sure that I did that. And I wondered if that wouldn't have been a better, solution to this.
So it is true that plastic bags are not recycled as often as paper bags. And there are plastic bag recycling containers at like Donnellan's, and there's another one in town where you can bring in your plastic bags to recycle. Roach Brothers used to have a program where they would offer you a discount when you brought your own bags, and they would ask if you would like to donate that to a specific charity. I have heard that Roach Brothers no longer does that because they are trying to cover the costs of the other Roach Brothers facilities that have had to switch to all paper bags. Interestingly enough, because you mentioned CVS and Panera, full disclosure, Paper Store, I feel compelled to say that I did reach out to CVS, and corporate will simply start sending them paper bags when we ban plastic bags. They were unconcerned. The Paper Store said it's about time and is on board for banning plastic bags. And that was true of a couple of retailers. They didn't have a feeling about the economic impact, but there is general support, and the plastic being a non-renewable resource is definitely something to consider, and something that the people who wrote this warrant article definitely have in mind, is to reduce plastic consumption. But this is a drop in the bucket, and so we do have to consider if it is worth it for our town and our consumers. The overall impact is minuscule at best.
Roland?
You can recycle at Roach Brothers, because I do it. I went to Roach Brothers tonight, I didn't even use a bag. So I didn't use a bag when I went to Roach Brothers tonight, and you can recycle at Roach Brothers, as I deposit my plastic bags. It reminds me of Concord a couple of years ago, banning all water bottles, plastic water bottles. So what's the net result? People want them, they come to Acton to buy them, or they go to another town. So I think it's getting into the conscience of people that, hey, recycle or reuse the bag twice, versus saying, hey, let's ban this. And, businesses already say, Acton is tough to do business with, and now you're going to make it even harder again. And if you keep making it harder and harder on businesses, they're not going to come here. They're going to leave. When their lease is up, see you later, bye-bye. It's too hard to do business in Acton. I'm done with it. And then what happens? So it's something to consider.
May not be much of a financial argument, but I'm personally opposed to this and opposed to imposing this restriction on everybody. If you choose not to use a plastic bag, that's fine. Bring your own. Don't use a bag at all. But a lot of people like plastic bags for frozen foods, for produce, for other items. And frankly, they don't all get thrown away. They get reused inside wastebaskets in bathrooms and bedrooms and things like that. You get rid of these now, you're going to buy Glad bags and put them in those same baskets. So by all means, if you want to save the planet and not use plastic bags, go for it. But I think there's a large percentage of people who do like them, who do use them, and should have the opportunity to get them.
Just to be clear, this is handled, single-use bags. It does not pertain to produce bags or the bags in the meat department, those, or Ziploc bags or any other of a long string of single-use plastic bags. It's specifically the ones you would get at checkout. I just wanted to.
Did you make a recommendation? Did you make a, wait, go ahead, sorry, Steve, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, I'm like Tom, I put these things in my wastebasket, so they do get reused. And many years ago, I lived in a town that had a paper mill in it that made paper that paper bags are made out of, and anybody that tells me that that's environmentally friendly, they need to live in that town. The river was polluted, the paint peeled off your car. It's a very ugly process.
So I move that we do not recommend this.
Second.
Any other conversation on this topic? All those in favor of not recommended for this article, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Wow, that's unanimous. Okay, moving on to Article number 32, Citizens Petition Building Moratorium. Tara, since you are here, I will give you the floor for 2 minutes. I would ask that you try and keep to this particular article, as I'll give you 2 minutes for each of the articles that you have. I've got one right here. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, certainly, thank you.
Very well.
I've already done it, so basically, I guess we can move on to questions. Tom, you had a question, or was that in the land clearing one?
Is there anything that you want to say, anything else that you wish to say on building moratorium, Article 32?
First of all, it's a non-binding. It's to give guidance to our planning department, through our Board of Selectmen. Just as a story, I would go to the Board of Selectmen and I would say, gosh, we should do some planning. We don't keep track of road capacity and all the assets that we're giving away with these permits and lack of changes in the zoning and water capacity. They would say, oh, well, the planning board does that. So I'd go to the planning board. The planning board would say that the planning department does that. And the planning department would say they're waiting for instructions from the Board of Selectmen. So I'd go around in circles like that. And basically, I asked Roland, why aren't you doing this planning? And he said, nobody has told me to. So this is a nice way to bring it to town meeting, to say if you're happy with the development, the pace of development, and then you vote no. And if you think that development is a problem, something we should be looking at, that you do believe that the water experts in town have warned us that we're going to build beyond our water pumping capacity, and whether this is an issue and whether we're threatening our water independence, then you vote yes for this, because you say, gosh, we do have a problem, Houston. Golly, we need to be looking at doing some actual planning or more hard-hitting planning, and this would give us time. This is what this is for. It's a temporary moratorium. It's a non-binding resolution to direct the Board of Selectmen to bring forward a temporary moratorium for us to vote on that would be binding in the next town meeting.
Okay, I will start with Jeff.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. There are good items on either side, and water is certainly one of them. I noticed this document here in the law of unintended consequences in full board. First of all, if everything appreciates, then people who don't have money can't come to this town, and then we're just a town of very rich people. And I know you don't want to do that.
Well, I'd like to answer that.
The second part of law of unintended consequences is one of the reasons we're able to keep our taxes in dollars relatively low is because we do have growth, and we therefore subsidize the current taxpayers with future costs going up because we have new taxpayers that come into the mix. So that although the town, if you stop building, I believe you would see a larger growth rate in the tax bill of each individual taxpayer. So this unintended consequences about taxes is that growth actually dampens the amount of increase in our tax rate and therefore tax bills. But in any event, that's all I wanted to say.
Chairman, may I respond?
Briefly.
So all of the planning studies show that development doesn't pay, that it costs more in those taxes later on. And for me, if I was going to invest in anything, I want to invest in something I can see. My town is the kind of investment that I want to make for my money. If I want to pay a little bit more in taxes to stop the development, to me that, let's go for it, because the return to me is way more than I'm going to get on Wall Street. And it's something I can control. And it's something that I can actually enjoy. I can enjoy that investment, the less burdened the road capacity and green space that we can benefit from. Oh, and by the way, he had asked two questions. So I'm going to be coming to you with an affordable housing program that I know is going to cost money. And it's going to be to buy condos, 30 to 40 of these condos that are very affordable, extremely affordable, go for sale every year, and I want to buy them and deed restrict them. And so in my world, I'd like to make money when I spend money, and I like to balance. And so I'm hoping that this can get in place so that in parallel, when I come and ask you for money, I'm already making you money. So I plan to do actual affordable housing that is for the very extremely low-income people who need the help the most, using existing resources that are already using the water and already using the road capacity and the school capacity. I think it's a much more sustainable solution, but I don't want to compete with my others. So.
Well, a couple of things with the way this petition is written. A moratorium really is, the purpose of a moratorium is a temporary ban, as you indicated. But you're talking 5 years. That's not temporary.
It's also, yes.
Therefore, I think it's really illegal. It will never fly. And I think the real purpose of this, as written in your description, is you're talking about you want a new master plan. This is also confiscatory because developers that own land are therefore not allowed to build on that. It's a financial burden for the town, for the developer. The community loses. This thing just won't fly. Plus, it seems like the town has a planning board and we have Terra, and they're both in conflict with each other. So who are we going to believe? Sometimes, we're all entitled to our own opinions, but not to our own facts. So I just think this thing is really, doesn't make sense. It's poorly written, poorly planned, it's very vague, and I just think we can't possibly support this as it's written.
Roland?
I'll ask Steve for clarification on Brian. Anything that's non-binding.
It's non-binding.
So the Board of Selectmen can just, so in other words, this passes and it's non-binding, the Board of Selectmen can just completely ignore it anyway because it's non-binding. It doesn't,
Yeah, it's a referendum, basically.
There's no, I'm asking Steve, Terry. So there's no impetus for them to make a decision if they don't want to.
I mean, in the best of all possible worlds, you would think the Board of Selectmen would take notice of something like this. But no, it's not required that they take an action.
I hate non-binding resolutions.
I believe everything that is a citizen's petition is non-binding.
No, not technically.
That I talked about, buying of that land, 2/3 vote.
Okay, now is it,
That was a binding buy this property.
what makes the distinction between a non-binding
The
and
petition
binding?
says it.
Petition says it.
Okay. Okay.
So can I respond to those?
Very, very
Very quickly,
briefly.
okay, I am tired of protecting the 0.1% of these developers. It's time we start protecting ourselves.
Just a comment, in terms of your supply and demand, it's an interesting theory. It would work if we were an island, but we're not. If we constrain it, people will buy their houses in Sudbury or Westford or somewhere else. It's that there's perfectly good school systems in other towns. We like to think ours is the best and we're unique, but the fact is we're not that unique. But you're not wrong about the planning part about this town.
Thank you.
I don't believe this is the way you fix it. But I've said for years, we don't think about the constraints on this town, water being the biggest one. You're on the right track, but this is not the way to fix it. I share your frustration, though, about the town departments.
So, as we discussed when we had lunch, I did recommend that potentially writing a petition to actually have the study done would be a more effective way of doing this. I do echo Mr. Major's position about this being taking from the existing rights of the existing homeowners. If this goes through, I believe we're going to be opening ourselves up to a ton of litigation, because anybody who wants to do what was once theirs to do by right now gets changed.
Well, actually,
So we are changing the rights of ownership in the town, and the Libertarian enemy does not like that at all. So
actually, the Medford, Meadowbrook, I can name a long list of towns that have already done this. It's a perfectly legal thing to do. Boxborough attorney just wrote a memo on how to do it.
I believe we're going to be opened up for lawsuits when people say that we're taking away their rights, and we are indeed taking away their rights. So with that, can I have a motion?
May I ask a question of whoever might know this, including Shara?
By all means.
How does this affect 40B? Do we fall under more 40B?
Well, again, it's non-binding. This is a referendum on whether we believe in the planning that's taking place and whether we want to stop for a few years and do a master plan. So it doesn't do anything,
But
really.
if the Board of Selectmen said, yes, we're going to,
They would construct something, and they would choose to do something, whether it was in the town bylaw or the zoning bylaw. 40B trumps zoning, doesn't trump the town bylaw, except where there's a fight between MHC and the town. And so, if it were that case and this was a binding situation, yeah, we would start talking about whether or not there was open to suits and all of this. But this is basically a referendum on planning. And I'm going to ask you to take no position. I feel like this doesn't actually impact the fiscal stability of the town. It's basically a non-binding market research project.
I was just about to make a motion saying I think we should give no recommendation on this. There's
On the other hand, I think Mr. Cole's point that it could potentially expose the town to litigation down the road is a financial impact and something we need to
And does
consider.
automatically preclude any new growth, which was Jeff's point about taxation as well.
Okay, but this is non-binding, and there's a lot of other things that could happen also.
You are welcome to make your motion. I'm going to, so you've made,
I haven't started a motion, I haven't gotten a second.
Motion not to take no, to make no recommendation is on the table. Do I have a second? Hearing no second, I will entertain any other motions.
A motion to not recommend.
Is there a second? Motion is to not recommend the non-binding resolution building moratorium. All those in favor of not recommending, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 1. Steve abstains. So that is, I don't know the numbers, but it definitely passes. It definitely passes with
7.
so, what's it? Yeah, 611? 611. Okay. Moving on to development rate limitation bylaw non-binding resolution. Seeing the petitioner is in the room. Tara, you may have 2 minutes to speak to this.
Oh, this will be
particular-
fast. So this is in case the first one fails. And so this is a softer, lighter version of just limiting the number of permits per year, as many towns have done in the state. It gives us a chance to say, okay, planning staff, even though you've hired 4 people in the last 10 years and you still are not doing any planning, that you might be able to spend a quarter of your time doing some planning if we limit the number of permits. And it allows people to get in line and get their permits if they're ready.
So what are you using, what is the yardstick against which you'll be measuring the town's capacity to accommodate new development?
I am not. In fact, that's one of the beauties of this petition article, is that it is non-binding, and it asks the Board of Selectmen to study it, to look at other towns and say, okay, Cambridge is doing this, and Wayland is doing that, and bring forth a proposal in a year.
Again, I'd be much more comfortable if there was something that you were actually measuring against. It almost sounds as if, again, to what I said about Article 32, it would make more sense to petition to create the yardsticks against which new development should be.
That's what it does. It asks the board, the
No,
voters.
this limits new construction.
Read
This
the-
does not define.
I thought it asks the Board of Selectmen to go away
Be it
and.
resolved that town meeting requests the Board of Selectmen to add
Correct.
to the April 2020 town meeting warrant a town bylaw which limits new construction to be consistent with the town's capacity to accommodate new development
Right.
and provide services. There is no current plan for what town capacity is.
That's my point.
So
That's the whole
again,
point.
but the action is to limit new construction.
It's
The
so that-
action is not to create a plan.
But it's to decide what the capacity is and bring forward an article that limits it to that
The
capacity.
action verb is which limits new construction. So I think this is, my argument with this is that it's too vague to be actionable. What does everyone else feel on this article?
Again, I think it's illegal. It won't pass legal muster. Open this up. It takes away the rights of not only the homeowner, but the developer who, they have a right to do this. Period.
Well, it is that within the town's purview to say that, you can't have more than X number of square feet on a lot. So the town does have the right to set limits on what goes on.
Yeah, I agree.
What I would be more comfortable at is if we actually knew what we were going to be measuring against.
They won't help me figure it out. That's what the point of this article is to get them to figure it out.
Again, if you would called specifically for the creation of the measurement against which to do new construction, that would be one thing. But this is limiting new construction without knowing what the yardstick you're measuring against is.
But
And that's
they
too
won't
vague
tell-
for me.
But they won't. This is to get them to decide what the capacity is. It says it right in there, that we want them to, if we want to vote, that we want them to figure out what the capacity is and then bring forth a limit based on that capacity.
Actually, I don't think the warrant says that. That may be the intention, but it doesn't say it. And as Mr.
Okay.
Cole is saying, a better resolution might be to request that the Board of Selectmen, engage a study to determine just that, rather than to have this limit. And unlike Article 32, which had a 5-year limit, this one seems to go on in perpetuity, so.
So, be it resolved, town meeting requests the Board of Selectmen to add to the April 2020 town meeting warrant a pound bylaw which limits new construction to be consistent with the town's capacity. So they would have to figure out the capacity to accommodate new development and provide the services needed to support that development.
Well, again, I find that to be shockingly vague, because
Okay.
you're leaving this up to the Board of Selectmen to decide what the capacity is. And they
Which
could come
do-
back with They could come back with, our capacity of this town is 150,000 people.
But that's
I
our
would not be
executive,
comfortable with that.
but our executive directors should be looking at that and figuring out what the capacity is, because they've already argued with
But
the
again, that's not what this article says.
water experts and said that they're wrong about the
Steve, I see your microphone is on.
running beyond our water capacity.
Again, I'm sympathetic, but this is the cart before the horse. Many years ago, I lived in Burlington, and Burlington had a problem with their sewer, their outflow system, and they enacted limitations. You couldn't add a bathroom. Actually, you couldn't add a bedroom, I think it was. They had the perverse logic that if people slept there, they'd flush the toilets.
It does tend to follow.
And they had a limitation on how much the system could handle, and they put in, basically, construction limitations.
But how do we figure out what those limits are? if
That's why I
go
say
to-
it's a cart before the horse.
But I go to the Board of
The
Selectmen.
limitation has to come after you figured out what the constraint is.
Yeah, no kidding, but they aren't doing it, so,
And just, didn't we already have one of these a couple of years ago, and we
No.
still don't have the study?
yeah, exactly.
So.
It's a big
but
shrug. And unless we do something,
I can't support the way this was written, so.
Mike, your microphone's off. Okay, very well. Any other conversation? Is there a motion?
I move we not recommend.
Any other conversation now that there's a motion on the table? Very well. All those in favor of making a not recommended, all in favor of not recommending this article, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And abstentions? Okay. Moving on to land clearing limits, Article 34. Again, Tara, this is to your petition. 2 minutes.
okay, I've given you a handout to this, and I explained it a little bit. And we are currently doing a survey of landowners and developers. We've gotten actually really good feedback so far. But this would limit the amount of, or the percentage, or actually it's a non-binding resolution to direct the Board of Selectmen to add to the 2020 town meeting a town bylaw which limits the amount of land cleared to a specific percentage. So if you can't trust them to figure it out themselves and bring it forward, then this would be, again, too vague for you. So I would understand you're not recommending. But this is a tool that is available to us. It would be a town bylaw, not a zoning bylaw, so no grandfathering. It would be I don't believe it would be subject to Chapter 40B, but I do not know that for a fact. Either way, again, this is a referendum to see whether or not the voters of this town want the directors, the executive directors of our town to actually do something about the amount of land being cleared. Currently, they clear cut these parcels. We lose, 50 acres a year. We preserve maybe 8, and so we're seeing basically deforestation of our entire town. So, but you may feel the same way about this as you do the others. I'm just hoping you vote for something in terms of action, because there is no action when it comes to planning here, folks.
So, I'll let the committee speak first. Anybody want to weigh in on this, or should I? Okay, so my concern about this is, I see your arguments of by forcing people not to clear cut the lots, that there is some benefit to having the de facto open space as a result of it. But what I'm curious about, and what I don't know how to quantify, is the loss, what it will do to home values to have owners' rights be limited in this manner, because you are imposing upon the current owner and all future owners limitations on what they can do with their lot. which I think definitely changes the overall value of the attractiveness of that purchase.
Thank you. I took your comment, you told me something similar the other day when we met, and I did some figures, and we just conservatively estimate that the percentage of I used a 20% or 30% reduction in the land clearing ability, and figured that would be a 30% reduction in the value, although developers are coming back saying that that's not true, it's less because they weren't going to be doing the clearing anyways, but that's a matter of opinion. But if you take that one parcel and you look at a 30% reduction, if you presume $200,000 value of that buildable lot, then that would be a $60,000 loss. But then you look at the direct abutters and presume a 5% protection of value there, it's $125,000, which is twice the reduction in that one parcel. But then you go for the abutters of the abutters and so on. And it looks to me like you would be protecting a lot more value than you would be taking away. And again, we're talking about by not doing something like this, we're talking about protecting the 0.1% of the people who would be subdividing and or building, as opposed to the people who already either live here or are doing something responsibly, like putting one house instead of 10. Anyway, thank you.
Roland?
So what happens if I have a tree in my lot, or actually I had to have two taken down, because one broke during a storm and it was diseased, and the other one was struck by lightning and was going to end up coming down on my house, and I fell below that percentage? Now what happens?
So first of all,
do I can't do that because it's impacting my residents from possibly the high ones we had the other night? Tree would definitely came down, it came down on my house.
no,
So
this is a non-binding.
my concern is that you're saying to somebody who already owns the house, well, you can't take those trees down because you'll fall below the percentage and too bad.
Well, this is a non-binding resolution, but if you look at the land clearing enabling language that has been passed at the state level, there are provisions for that. It's for people who have a building permit, not for people who already have a house that are taking trees down for whatever reason. It's to prevent clear cutting for building purposes.
Jeff, I saw your hand up first.
So we have a model for this. It's called Homes on a Lake. You're not allowed to take trees within 100 feet of the lake, any tree, and within 200 feet, they cannot be greater than so many inches in diameter. And so there are restrictions like that. It's not worded this way, but it's more from the environmental runoff and having forest around your property. And to the best of my knowledge, it certainly does not impact negatively the value of having a lot that's on the lake. It's just that you have to be a little bit more careful about what you do. Certainly it makes it more inconvenient to build a house if there's certain big trees in the way, and you got to kind of protect them as you bring heavy equipment around and things like that. In my case, I had a tree that was leaning towards the house, and I went and I had to get a permit to be true, and yet I could show that I had planted all these other vegetation on the slope to the lake and two other trees in its place. Of course, they were small trees, but and I was no problem in getting a permit to take that tree down. In your case, if it was struck by lightning, I mean, clearly that would be a permittable event. But there are some things like, sure you can, but you've got to add more trees and you've got to fill back in. So to your point, if you go below a certain percentage, or if you take trees out within that area, you have to replant.
Yeah, again, this is well intended, and we all love trees, and trees are important. We all need to be stewards of the land. However, if a property owner wants to build a house, lives on a wooded lot, we can see preserving trees along the driveway or along the highway or byway. But if they need to put in a septic system and there happens to be 20 trees there, if this bylaw prevents him or her from putting in his septic system and thereby building his house because he would have to remove too many trees. You know, you're you're violating his rights to do what he has a right to do by preventing him from building his house or putting in a septic system. Again, we said we all need to be stewards of the land. We all love trees, but this, a specific percentage, which is unquantified, and also it refers to a moratorium again. Where's the moratorium come in here? It's the wording of the whole article is, need to be more quantifiable and more specific. You're talking about land clearing limits, and then you're also talking about a moratorium. What is it, one or the other?
It's a moratorium on the tree clearing. Anyway, it's a typo, actually, but.
Right.
Christie?
Having grown up in a small town that has exactly this sort of a bylaw to it, I was shocked to learn that we don't have one here. It has shown zero decline in the value. It was determined to be important enough that it has been imposed on the entirety of the island. There are many things you cannot do because it could be visible by your neighbors. If you took down some of your trees that you might be allowed to take down, this is something they highly, heavily protect and think there's significant value in.
So we already protect anything that's in wetlands, so this is just an extension of what it's already part of, protection that's already imposed by the state. Steve?
Well, as Jeff was saying, certainly around lakes, New Hampshire, Maine, there's limitations on what you can do in terms of cutting down trees. And the reason the limitations exist is to protect water quality in the lake. Now, as one of the larger municipalities in the state that is primarily on septic, we have the same problem. We have to protect the groundwater quality because, let's face it, we drink the water we poop in here. All that wastewater goes into septic, goes into the ground, and then we pump the groundwater for drinking water. So we need to do something like this. Once again, Tara, I can't agree with the way you worded it.
Well, you guys are helping me make my presentation. I appreciate it. You brought up a whole bunch of stuff I didn't think of.
So
That's why
somehow we
everything's
have to
public.
get,
That's why everything's done in the public. Sorry.
somehow we have to get this idea across. I know years ago we used to have whatever, a groundwater bylaw or study committee that the state, and I don't know whatever happened.
Yeah, we can't get the staff to do it. I can't get the staff to do it until we get direction from town meeting.
And, again, I don't like moratoriums and I don't like percentages. I probably won't support this.
Non-binding
But we need to do something to deal with this issue.
I guess I don't see that this does something for what you're talking about. What you're talking about is valid, and I would love to see something written that would address that.
Well, I hope you guys say that. If you don't recommend or take no position, can you please talk? The whole point of this is to have this discussion. The fact that we're having this discussion here is just exactly why I did it. That we have this discussion at town meeting floor and somebody stands up and says stuff so that maybe staff will respond, maybe the Board of Selectmen will respond, and that's my only hope.
Just a question, Tara, the article speaks to a land clearing limit. The handout you
Yes.
gave refers to reducing the buildable area on an acre of land. To me, those are two different things, right?
Say that again, I'm not sure I
The
understood.
handout that you provided talks about reducing the buildable area.
Oh,
on an
buildable
acre.
area is the land clearing limit, same thing.
Right, so, but they're kind
Yeah, I
of two
see
different
that.
things, right?
Yeah.
And zoning
To a
already
layperson.
takes that into account? I
Well,
presume.
yes and no, because it doesn't say anything about trees. Just like the Water Protection Act, everybody's like, oh, no, if we protect the water, you'll like limit my rights to profit. And so it's a different way of protecting the trees specifically, because we do have setbacks. So you have the little gray square, it's within the setback, but you can still clear all the trees on the lot. You can drive up on Pope Road and see one guy did it. Cleared the whole lot. It's like 3-acre lot. Bang, no trees. Oh, public comment, excuse me.
If I may be so permitted.
Please do. Please do.
Danny Factor, 11 Davis Road. I want to speak in favor of this proposal for another reason that hasn't been mentioned. We've mentioned a lot of reasons why we want to have trees, but I want to mention climate change, as well. We are in a emergency right now. Every decade, every year, every month, every week matters as far as how quickly we confront this. And as you probably know, there is a connection between trees and climate change from the point of view of carbon sequestration. So what this proposal does is that it would allow, if it passes, a mandate from the town to force the discussion with the Board of Selectmen and make the board delegate responsibility to town staff and other boards to be able to clear up any issues that are mentioned here as far as the possible lack of preciseness. So I would ask you to try to put aside, any quibbles with the language, because that will be resolved by the town. But without supporting a mandate, and your vote is important as far as influencing the public how to vote at town meeting, no doubt. Without a mandate and a call from the town, it will keep the Board of Selectmen from having that mandate and be able to implement the very preciseness in language that we all agree, is needed to get this right. And I mentioned climate change in particular because with a lot of these other issues having to do with the aesthetics of trees and stuff like that, it's something we can work on in the next 100 years. But as far as climate change, time is running out. This conversation has to happen now, and it's not going to happen at the Board of Selectmen level without a town mandate. So I urge you to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Well, I just want to remind you that it's not an actual mandate, it's the referendum mandate, because it's non-binding. But yes, thank you, Danny.
You know what I said to you at lunch about reminding us that it's non-binding? You're undermining your own argument.
I'm trying.
It's either worth doing or it's not worth doing.
I think it's worth doing.
Don't comment about
Darn it,
non-binding.
thank you.
Motion to make no recommendation.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of making no recommendation, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay? Nay. Okay, do this by hand so that the clerk cannot hold it. All those in favor of no recommendation, please raise your hand. I have Steve, Christine, Jeff, Roland, and Tom. All the nay votes for documentation purposes are Mike, Jason, and yourself. And any abstentions? Okay, so the no recommendation at all carries.
Thank
you. Just to let the committee know, I would like to make it through Article 37, which are all of the petitions that Tara has. She's let me know that she cannot make it to our next meeting. So since she's here, I do want to move through those articles, and then I will probably be willing to call it a night. But that's my intention as it lands now. So that was 34 land clearing limits. Moving on to limit size of new single-family houses, another non-binding resolution. Tara, 2 minutes to your petition.
Thank you. This is actually a petition that came out of the Green Acton Land Use Committee, although the Land Use Committee is not the petitioner in this case, but I did this because a good friend of mine really cares about this and wants this to be on the warrant so that we can have a discussion about limiting the size of new single-family homes to 4,000 square feet or less, to limit the amount of gas-fueled, fracked gas that's being used in town, 2-car garages, road capacity, water capacity, all the same stuff. But here's a hard limit for you, Steve. It's right here. There is a number in this one. And so she's hopefully going to speak to this at town meeting, and I don't want to keep you too long, so I hope you vote for this one or take no action. Thank you.
Anybody wish to speak to this? So from my perspective, the libertarian in me doesn't want to limit what people do. If you buy a large enough lot in this town, then you should be allowed to do what you wish with it, as per all the other zonings and bylaws and other by rights that we've already imposed. Also, the larger the house, right, Mr. McMullen, the bigger the tax bill.
Yes.
Therefore, I have no problem with squeezing the most out of the value of the
more
land.
kids
May I
that can go in the
respond to
school
this?
system.
May I respond to this?
So to that point, Steve, I would love to see some data on if people in rich, large houses decide to have that third, fourth, and fifth kid, or if they just enjoy living in a very big house. So while I'm absolutely sympathetic to that $5,198 per student average, I suspect that you're not always going to have incremental new kids just because you have an incrementally larger house. Mr. Majors.
Yes, to a couple questions to Brian. How many houses, you probably know this, are in Acton, the town of Acton? Or take a guess.
How many houses over?
Households.
Oh, households. So, well, what's your definition of a household? So we have probably about 5,000 single-family homes. We get about 2,800 condominiums, but those condominiums consist of detached units, townhouses, as well as garden-style units. So, if you want to add that to the 5,000, 7,800, that doesn't include
that's good
apartments.
For these purposes. Now, I'll ask Tara. Now, what is the average of those houses? What is the average square footage?
So what we did is we looked at
Existing square footage.
the existing square footage. So what we were doing is we were looking at the number that's built that is over 4,000 square foot. And we're talking 2, 3, 4 a year, 5 a year max. But again, it's still limit the size of
You're
trees.
saying you don't know then?
I don't know yet. I will find that out by town meeting. But if Brian helps me, because I've kind of asked some of these questions before, and if the FinCom asks, then Brian will be able to dig that information out. Whereas when I ask, it's something that goes down on the lower pie of the pile.
Well, I just went on Zillow and looked on Acton houses over 4,000 square feet that are currently for sale or have been sold recently, and there's dozens and dozens and dozens. So there are a lot of houses in Acton that are already over 4,000 square feet. The other thing is, why 4,000? What is magic about 4,000?
I have no clue. My friend figured it out, and she decided that's big enough, is what she said. That's big enough.
So we're supposed to vote on that?
This is for new, hang on, this is new single-family homes. This is about how much room do you actually need. We've been talking about public necessity housing and a 40B. Sometimes these 40Bs are 2,200 square feet. We have people that live in 900 square feet, 2 bedrooms, perfectly happy. But is 2,000 enough? Is 3,000 enough? Is 4,000 enough? When is it enough? So she picked the number based on some studies that she was looking at, and
The libertarian in me is Diane. This is, you can't
But you should just erase all zoning. You should erase all zoning and stoplights.
What enough is.
What's that?
That's
I
what
hope
you're
she
saying.
does by town meeting, yes. That we have to decide what is enough.
You
Roland?
can just put a whole tiny house community that they're all 150 square feet, and you can put 10,000 on one lot, and away you go, and that's.
I'm personally totally in favor.
Mr. Noon, where are we in the,
space with my wife and my son.
where
I
are
have
we
a
with
2-car
that?
garage, and I have it stored.
How big is your
Take my
house?
table in there,
How big is your house?
under 1,900 square feet.
There you go. It's enough.
So
Yeah.
I need a bigger house, is actually what I need.
But you need
anyway,
4,000.
Beside the point. So. again,
This would not limit you from expanding to your rights under zoning. This is for new single-family
Well, there's only
homes.
so much I can put on my lot, because my lot is not an acre lot.
It's also
So-
non-binding, guys.
So all these are
It's
all.
10 o'clock.
Yeah, but the,
Hey, Charlie, Mr. Chairman.
it appears to be.
I move that you take no
4,000 is
action.
arbitrary.
Do I hear a
That is
second?
not your prerogative. Mr. Burghardt, you've waited patiently.
Yeah, I think in this particular case, I believe that we shouldn't be putting, our morals about we don't like big houses and you shouldn't be, I think, what is that, Land Rovers, the big huge monsters that came out? Hummers. I mean, I thought they should be banned, but then I realized, hey, if they're dumb and want to have 2 gallons to the mile, then, who am I to judge? So I have a real deep problem about individual rights in that sense. On the other hand, the neighborhood I grew up in, Newton, had very nice little homes in each of the lots, and everything was great. And then some of them got dilapidated, and all of a sudden they put on 4-story McMansions that
Right.
just blew away the neighborhood. So I don't have a problem with zoning and rules that talk about some sort of uniformity and civility and scale, neighborhood by neighborhood. But if you've got 3 acres and you want to put 5,000 square foot place, which could be in the middle and have huge trees all around it, I don't have a problem with that.
Is there a motion? Ms. Majors?
Yeah, I move that we do not recommend this article.
Is there a
Second.
Anybody want to discuss this further, or should we move on to a vote? All those in favor of not recommending this article, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay, abstentions? You get the nays there, Christie? Very well. Moving on to non-binding resolution about turning lanes. Come on. Sorry, got to get this banner to move. Do not add turning lanes at Route 111 and Route 27. Tara, to your petition.
Okay, so I have a problem with the current proposed design. I have a problem with the fact that it suddenly added turning lanes and lights to accommodate the developers, and then they passed in that design into the state, even though it wasn't the same design that we approved when we approved the design funding. Setting that aside, I feel like we got to go back to that design, the original design, and this is a referendum to ask the voters what they think. This will probably come up after the Kelly's Corner funding article. It'll probably be the second night, so this is a referendum to ask whether people actually like the design, which I believe facilitates overdevelopment. It's going to make it possible for a huge 40B at the Kmart Plaza, perhaps even one behind the CVS. We can tell us all about your safe harbor and all this other stuff, but unless we own that parcel, the Kmart parcel, I say we're probably going to get it, especially if we add $1 million worth of traffic light and a huge mall driveway into the Charter Road section. So this is to ask people if they're okay with that design or not, and again, it's a non-binding referendum to find out what the voters think.
Christie?
My understanding from the traffic engineers is that the turning lanes are specifically necessary to making traffic through the intersection more efficient, not to having cars drive faster through it, but to have less backup. My understanding also is that cars sitting idling is really bad for the environment. So how do you balance that?
Okay, yes, I have a response to that, Chairman. So, first of all, more efficient. I mean, I'm a return on investment engineer, and to me, more efficient is faster. And if you look at the figures before and after, it is faster. The speed, average speed in the intersection will double. I believe that adds risk. I believe that adds crossing distance. The unnecessary crossing distance is going to add risk. This idea of putting refuge islands, people are getting killed on these refuge islands. The idea that it mitigates the entire safety risk by adding these islands, I think, is a fallacy. So then, in terms of the carbon footprint, the study for the reduction in the carbon footprint presumes that no other cars figure out that they can go through the intersection. And so there's an old planning motto or statement that is, best solution for traffic is traffic. That by facilitating and easing and making a car-centric space, people to race through, that facilitates more cars, more car use, and overall does not change the carbon footprint. So, and especially since you're reducing all the tree, these huge trees, and you're adding all the construction, concrete, and all of that to the mix, I don't believe that this reduces our carbon footprint. The proposed design. I think the original design would.
Two counterpoints. One, this proposal makes me much more comfortable with biking down Main Street, which I love biking. I would bike everywhere if that was reasonable. Main Street is not currently a safe place to bike, especially that intersection. So that would get my car off the road a lot more.
Thank you.
And my understanding of the plan is that it is going to replace the circumference of trees around town, not just in that one area, including putting trees in places where they can flourish. So actually putting trees in a park where they can become a lot bigger and not have to get their branches cut off because they're near utility poles, lines, and other things.
So the tree circumference issue, first of all, they have no ability to commit to it because they would have to commit to it in a budget that they don't have. And the state has not committed to planting trees all over Acton. If they could plant the trees, they should have been doing it all along. But I'll just set that aside. They've not committed to the exact same number of inches. And the absorption rate of a tree that is this big already is not the same as a bunch of little spindly trees. Relative to biking through, both designs would provide the bike lanes. So the old design and the current design both would do bike lanes. In fact, you have to as soon as you start construction in a state-funded project or federally funded project, which we do get some money from that.
So if I'm thinking this through, on the first day of town meeting, Kelly's Corner is going to present, and let's say it passes. And then on the second or third day of town meeting.
Second.
We come to your non-binding resolution, and everybody has already seen the design and approved it. We're possibly dealing with a different audience makeup, and now you want to propose a change to the meeting, to what has already been voted on. Is that accurate?
Yes. And so the reason is this. A lot of people are nervous they'll get nothing. The Kelly's Corner people, I don't believe so. I've talked to the state people. They say pushing off a year is a normal thing. Pushing off 2 years is also a normal thing. I don't think it'll risk it. But a lot of people are scared, and they want to vote for it just to get something. But then they have reservations and concerns, and this would allow them to express those concerns.
We've been talking about this project for 20-something years, and concerns have been expressed, and there's been a lot of give and take and a lot of trying to find the best answer, and you're never going to get everybody on board. And if you do this and it passes, what's to stop the next time somebody saying, well, I think we should have a resolution to include turn lanes? And that's
Well, so when we voted for the lo-fi design, I'll call it, over a period of time, this project grew in scale. It doubled in scale, and it conveniently, the developers showed up, and they needed stoplights, and all of this stuff got added to the design, and then it was sent into the state as the official 25% design without even a public hearing. So for me, I'm just saying, let's go back to what we actually voted for and give people an opportunity to say, is this really what we want? So it's non-binding, so people can ignore it. But if 80-90% of the people say, yeah, we don't really like this design. We like the idea of a project. We gave you the funding yesterday. But hey, we kind of agree with those guys. We kind of would like to save those trees. We kind of would like to not facilitate the overdevelopment of those parcels. And golly, is the risk not worth the reward on the widening of these streets?
Tom, I see your microphone's on. That was easy. Any other comments on this article? Anybody else wish to weigh in?
I guess just a question. Christine mentioned the first night we'd be voting on the design. I don't actually see that in the warrant. Article 5 talks about
Yeah, it's under the Town Capitals, number 6, Kelly's Corner Supplemental Engineering.
It's
and
not
Appraisal.
necessarily that we're voting on the design, but we're going to be presented with the design.
that was my question.
Yeah, and
And-
so we're going to vote the continuation of funds based on
Based on
that
that
design.
design.
And legally, there's the argument to be made that that would be the approval of the design because you were presented the design and then approved the funding.
I just want to clarify where that
Yeah.
happened. So I would agree with you, it's,
I would be concerned if people went home that day thinking they were done and then found out that the next day something else happened on that article.
I'm sure the town moderator would like to know, are you planning on making a motion from the floor to take up Article 37 before Article 5?
Geez, that's not a bad idea, actually. Thank you. You know, like I said, there are a lot of people who are like, they want something, they want anything, but logistically speaking, I'm going to think about that.
Mr. Majors?
Yeah, it just should be noted that the Kelly's Corner infrastructure and streetscape plan, the MassDOT 25% design public hearing will take place right
this
here in
room
this
next
room on March the
Tuesday.
5th, next week, here at room 204 at 7 p.m.
So again, we're only at 25% now?
Oh, but see, 25%, that's what we've been told. But if you look at the actuality of what a 25% design submission is, it's almost done. So we were told, don't worry, this is only the 25%, they told us. They submitted it, and then we came back to the next meeting and said, okay, we're ready to talk about changes. They said, oh, we don't need to now because it's already been submitted, and it's 25%, which means in, traffic speak that it's done. And we're like, wait a second, that's not what you told us the last meeting. So we really should have been more knowledgeable, not that, how can the public know that, and do something ahead of time, a special town meeting or something to disrupt that process. If we had known,
Okay. Steve?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we not recommend this article.
Second.
My feeling is that at some point we got to agree and move forward on this. And we may not all like every part of the plan that's going forward, but if we keep revisiting it and revisiting it, nothing will ever happen, and that's the experience we've had for the last 25 years. So if people want something done with Kelly's Corner, and if I go back to the 2020 survey they did, let's do something, let's move forward.
Okay, we have a motion that has been seconded. All those in favor of not recommending this article, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That was unanimous. And we have one more from this petitioner. Number 37, the register intent
the
to purchase the
Kmart.
Kmart parcels.
Oh, I forgot all about the Kmart one. I wrote this for, I wrote this for a group of people that aren't here tonight. And they wrote to me today and said they just came off of spring break and they'll be writing to Jason to set up a meeting time. They asked me, what can we do to stop residential development at that site? And I was like, oh man, you guys are so late to the game, but here's what I would do. And I gave them all kinds of ideas. I said, put together a proposal to buy the thing, put together a proposal. They want, they've been talking about someplace in Westford, it's like a recreation center, all ages recreation center that's a for-profit, but they were talking about doing it in partnership with the town, and I'm like, that's great, put together a proposal and bring it forward. And as we went through the weeks, I realized, shoot, this is going to take them a long time to do it. I said, well, what you could do is at least register with the state that you intend to buy it, and then at least stop a 40B application from happening, and then we cover all our bases. And so they liked that, and I put together the language, and they went off and got signatures. In fact, Danny was there. They just put one post on the Facebook page to come down to Kmart and sign the thing, and there was people come streaming in. Isn't that right? I'm like, shoot, man. It was great. So this is, yeah, and so this is exciting. It's more people getting involved, and it's parents that want to have something better for their kids. And so I'm all for this. It doesn't cost us anything. It's a non-binding resolution. And all it would do is direct the town, if they see fit, to send in such a letter. And at the very least, we'll have our officials stand up at town meeting and guarantee that there won't be a 40B there, because they've said that in meetings, trying to urge them to stop the petition. And so there you have it. So we get to have a discussion about this at town meeting too.
So I did commit to you in our lunch that I would reach out to town council, which I have not done yet, because you had said that you had heard from previous town council that merely the registering of intent is enough to stop a 40B.
Actually, no, I want to back up on that. He said that the process to start eminent domain starts with the letter of intent. And then I heard that a 40B, once it's filed, would short circuit a town's ability to do eminent domain. So I asked a recent municipal lawyer, so can we file that intent? And they said yes. So it wasn't technically the town's lawyer started me on it, but not for this particular petition.
So I find that intriguing, because if there is, because I am, as will become, as it will not come as a surprise to anyone on this committee, except maybe Al, who hasn't been around for more than one meeting. I absolutely am all for doing anything possible to keep Kmart from becoming a residential area. I am skeptical, however, that merely registering intent to purchase will do that. But I will follow through with my commitment to speak to town council about it and get back to you. Which does beg the question, do we want to vote on this tonight? I did want to make sure we brought it up tonight, since I know that Ms. Fredericks cannot make our next meeting. I did want to bring everything up, make sure that she's had her chance to speak, but I am prepared to wait until I hear back from the town council if indeed this will preclude a 40B. Christine?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to point out that it is the point of view of this committee that we do not make land purchases without knowing what we intend to build on the site.
That is duly noted.
May I say one thing relative to?
Can you do it in under 10 seconds?
Yes. So such a letter, Stephen Anderson told me, had to have 3 or 4 paragraphs of a justification why it's strategically important for the town to maintain it to be commercial. So,
Like I said, I will speak to the town council.
So 2 things. How much do you think it would cost to buy the Kmart?
well, they say 7 million, but if we add that light, it'll probably be 8 or 10. I mean, that's honesty, really.
Yeah. I have a bridge that you could buy cheap in Brooklyn, but using the same logic. But the thing is, no, I just forgot my train of thought, but with Kmart, just like less than 1 hour ago, we talked about 2 properties, the Main Street, the Walker property. We talked about River Street, where we put money out that we will never get back. What do we're going to, shame on us if we do it a 3rd time with Kmart.
Well, personally, I think River Street was a great purchase.
Where are we going to get probably 15 million or whatever to buy that property? Especially once this infrastructure is done, that site is going to look very attractive.
It's darn right. We're going to pay twice the price.
Yeah.
But in eminent domain, you only get what's allowed by zoning.
But I don't think you have the grounds for eminent domain.
Yes, Stephen Anderson told me. He said that he hadn't seen a parcel that would be.
I don't think that would fly.
He said we have all the documentation necessary. It has to be shown to be a strategically important parcel over a period of years, and he said the master plan is full of the information.
Tom, I saw your microphone on before Steve's.
Yeah, just a question. How binding is our intent to exercise the authority to take ownership? How binding is that?
Right.
If 3 years later we say, just kidding.
I think it'll give us a year or 2, just enough to deal with the Stop and Shop, the end of the Kmart lease, and then decide what we really want to do, and enough to give these parents a chance to get their act together and come up with an actual plan, because, as Jason says, as you guys have said, you don't want to support anything that you don't have a plan for.
And prices don't always go up forever. There are cycles. And
Thank you.
if 3 or 4 years from now, there's a downturn
Good
and the
point.
value of that parcel is diminished greatly,
Good point.
are we somehow liable if it was just a bluff all along? We never intended to buy it.
No, there's no commitment to it until we actually make the vote at town meeting, a 2/3 vote.
I'd like to hear what you have to say next time on the subject.
Please confirm my math here, but we just talked about a $35 million town operating budget. $7 million, I believe, is 20% of that. We're not buying this lot. The town cannot afford to buy this lot.
Well, the actual figures, if we continued to lease it and used our 2% borrowing power, it would pay for itself in a period of years, depending, if Kmart stays or we have to go get another type of store. But they pay taxes on the lot. We wouldn't if we bought it, but they pay rent. So $750,000 we estimate, I think it was, in the appraisal per year rent. So, and if we did this, we could do it with an EDIC type of, quasi-public agency. We have an EDIC in place. We have that ability to use it. But again, it's just to give us time. This is just a non-binding resolution to give us time, give them time to prepare a plan, a proposal.
As we've stated before, we are not in the business of being in business. This is a town. So while I think it'd be wonderful to be able to have the land and rent it out and have control over what it is, I don't think we can reasonably recommend this.
Everyone okay with holding off on this one until we hear back from the town lawyer to see if this is even meets the stated goals? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, on that, we will move on to Finance Committee business. With everyone's approval, I will hold off on any further articles for tonight. Is that enough? Does that meet with the committee's desire? Okay. With that, we'll move on to Finance Committee business. We have minutes from our last meeting that were sent out by our studious clerk. Did anyone find anything in the minutes of the meeting of February 15th that people wish to announce at this time? I will entertain a motion.
I did send Christie some edits. Okay. So move to approve the minutes of,
As amended.
as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? I got 2 abstentions here. I've got Tom and Roland. Okay. Moving on to committee reports. Let's start on this side of the table for a change. Tom? Al, I don't think you've been assigned a committee yet, so you're off the hook. Christie?
Kelly's Corner is having the Mass DOT Run 25% Design Public Forum next Tuesday.
Which you will miss.
Yes.
Thank you. Roland?
CPC meeting was last week, as I indicated earlier. There was a follow-up presentation by the town manager, Manager Artie, on stabilizing the house right up here, the Asa Parlin House at 17 Woodbury, for a proposal of $175,000 that would, at one point, town wanted to tear it down in 2014. The HDC would not give them a permit to do that because it is a historic property. It is taking off some of the newer portions of the building to help stabilize the building so the town can decide exactly what they want to do with it. At first, I didn't think I was too much in favor of it, but after looking at what they're planning on doing, parts that would come down, it seems like it might be a good thing because we've already spent a ton of money on that, doing studies and everything else in the past. So, Board of Selectmen are in favor of it. That's basically what I have on that. Again, they're not they're close to finalizing their article for town meeting. They only have a few more to do, and they should be able to do that this Thursday, hopefully. And I will reach out to them about March 5th.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, like a broken record, Minuteman is on schedule, under budget. But there will be going, just so you know, the stage of the construction that they're at, that goes on permanent power the 28th, which is Thursday this week. July 25th, they'll be substantially complete. September 25th, they'll be totally complete.
First day of school.
And they'll be moving in, students will be moving in the first Monday in September, which is September the 2nd. Things are looking good.
Thank you. Jeff? Christine? Steve? I am proud to announce that last week I did not go to any town-related meetings. Oh,
One thought, though. We did get another complaint yesterday.
yes, we did. I did
And
not
of
put
course,
it.
because it's not on the agenda, we should not discuss it.
That is why we have not discussed it.
But can we put it on next week?
We have to by law, so, yeah, you can count on it for next time. Point of view outreach, Sahana's not here. I know that we've got one coming up on the 13th of March. I believe the next one is the 13th of March.
No, on Sunday, Sahana and I are doing one for the, whatever, the Chinese community.
Do you need sheets, or do you still have them from last time?
I still have some, plus I've been told we're going to do a PowerPoint, so.
Even
He's
better,
doing-
save trees.
And he's doing it in Chinese. He speaks Mandarin.
No, I'm not.
Okay, I believe that is enough for point of view outreach. Did I miss anything? If not, all eyes turn to Al.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?